Switzerland, home to Europe's most epic mountains and a country known for stunning landscapes and dramatic scenery. And luckily, it also has quite dark skies. Sounds like the perfect combo for Milky Way photography, right? In this video, I'm photographing the Milky Way at an amazing glacial lake in the Swiss Alps, located at 2,000 meters above sea level. And a curious fox jumps in front of the camera and scares the heck out of me. I hope you enjoy the video. Good evening from the Swiss Alps, and we just drove the van up this incredible mountain pass and parked it beside the road on a viewpoint of this really amazing glacier lake. The idea is to photograph the lake and the mountains, of course, with the Milky Way tonight. Right now I'm just looking for some compositions because obviously the sun is setting, it'll get dark soon. And it is a bit of a tricky spot here. There's quite the drop down here. So that's why I'm out here now, so I know where I'm going tonight. So I don't have so much time, but I did check this location out on Google Maps and planned it a little bit on PhotoPills as well. So I had an idea of where to go. But still, I'm trying to find an interesting foreground element, and then of course to support all of this back there. So the idea is to use these rocks here as a foreground. I'm gonna have to try and balance them out a little bit with where the Milky Way is going to be, which should be above this peak here. And then of course this amazing lake right there. As you can see, at the moment it's still pretty cloudy. So I'm not sure how the weather's going to change. The forecast says that it should be clear, but in the mountains you never know. Anyway, I'm going to enjoy this view a little bit with my girlfriend and come back here later tonight when it's dark. See you later. So it's cleared up very nicely and the sky is looking incredible. No light pollution, no moon, and we're at about 2,000 meters above sea level. So yeah, just an incredible night sky. The Milky Way is visible with the naked eye. So yeah, can't wish for more. Okay, so I've set up the camera with the composition that I found before. And I'm gonna take a few different exposures. So the first one is going to be for the immediate foreground, and then one for the background, and then of course one for the Milky Way itself. For that foreground photo, I'm going to focus on the foreground, so not focusing on infinity, because I'm quite close to my foreground and I want to have that in focus, of course. And then the next shot is going to be on infinity because the mountains are so far away anyway, and of course infinity will work as well for the Milky Way shot. And for the immediate foreground, I'll have to do two different exposures, just because I have to focus stack them as well, because I'm a little bit too close to the lens. For the foreground and the mountains, I'll be doing an extra long exposure. So I'm using the Sony app here Going into bulb mode, f1.8 ISO 500 will hopefully get me a pretty noiseless foreground. And then I'll expose for probably 4 minutes for the immediate foreground and for the mountains as well. So those are 3 different shots and then 1 shot for the Milky Way, and that should hopefully get me a pretty cool image. Even though these raw files seem very dark, there's actually a lot of data in the shadows that can be recovered while post-processing. And that's because they're not completely underexposed as with a shorter exposure time. You can see that here if we compare the histogram of a 25-second exposure with the histogram of a 4.5-minute exposure. The histogram of a 4.5-minute exposure is more spread out and not entirely towards the shadows. To be honest, it's still a little bit too much towards the left, so an even longer exposure would have been even better. So for the sky, I'm doing a 25-second exposure at f1.8 and ISO 2000. I'm really happy with how the final image turned out. The detail in the foreground and in the mountains looks great, and it's just not possible to get these results with a single exposure image. So it's definitely worth the extra effort of taking these extra long exposures and blending them together with a sky exposure. I find that it seriously improves the quality of the image and makes it stand out more in comparison to a single exposure image. Fox just walked right past me. Okay, not the best video proof, I know, but I even captured him while taking that time lapse, and I never even noticed him standing there. I just heard him when he walked past me at less than a meter away. So I'm trying to take one last photo here, but I think there's some construction or something going on by the lake, because there's just lights moving around all the time and it doesn't stop. So I don't know how this is gonna work out. I'm gonna stay a little bit longer, see if they stop, and otherwise it's going to be a really tricky Photoshop job. It seems like they're finally driving away, so I can take that last exposure of the night and finally go to bed. I actually already gave up. I packed my camera in the bag and everything, and just at that moment I saw that they were like all moving back to the same point and that they were packing up or something, I suppose. So put the camera back on the tripod, tried to find the same composition again, and yeah, now for that final exposure of the night and then to bed. So this is another blended image. It's one exposure for the landscape at 4.5 minutes and then a 25-second exposure for the Milky Way. I hope you enjoyed this night photography adventure in the Swiss Alps. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.